A little unclear as to whether I was going to get to it or not, but it certainly needed to be done, especially given that we're now looking at a probable landfall, probably a named storm, and probably tomorrow night into early Saturday morning. So as I tuck in the cables so I don't trip over it, yep, we're talking about this thing right here, currently called potential tropical cyclone number 3. I'll explain what that means for those of you that didn't catch some of our earlier weathercasts. In the meantime, I see some notes out there from some folks. Hey, Brad. Hey, Angie. Joshua's out there. Pauline. Look, those are on my page. I head over to the main page, and yeah, look at all the names popping up. Jamie, Donna, Tammy, Vicky. Hey, I can't say hello to all of you. So I think you got the idea what we're going to do here. Now, we do this every time, and we're going to remind you again, don't ask me what's going to happen in this town or that town. We're not going to focus on that. Keep in mind, we don't even have a tropical depression yet. So all of this is purely hypothetical, but there seems to be a decent amount of confidence in the forecast, at least coming out of the National Hurricane Center. I'll admit, I'm maybe not quite as confident as they are, but in the last hour or two, I've had a couple of signs, a couple of signals here that have made me feel a little bit better about it all. So, but let's put it in perspective. So we've had 2 named storms already, Anna and Bill. Both of those in the western Atlantic, both of those staying out over the open water. Some people like to call those fish storms. My favorite kind of storm, a storm that doesn't affect anybody. We get to watch it, we get to track it, but we don't have to deal with it. Well, here we go. We're in the Gulf of Mexico. We've got a storm that the Hurricane Center is convinced will become a tropical storm or a subtropical storm, probably a tropical storm, Claudette. That would be the 3rd storm of the season, 3rd named storm of the season, the first one destined to make landfall. And who's going to get it? The same state that took 4 last year. That's right. Looks like Claudette, or soon to be Claudette, has her eyes on the Louisiana coast. So we'll go ahead and we'll start rolling through that. I see just lots of folks there logging in. I appreciate it from all of you on the main Facebook page at WAFB. Looks like we've got even some folks over there following us on the First Alert page. Thank you for that. And a handful of you also tracking it on my page, J. Grymes WAFB. Now, I will try and get to some of the questions, but just be aware, that's 3 pages I got to follow, and these questions are flying by left and right, so I'm not going to be able to keep up with all of them. So I'll see what we got. Am I going to have a long weekend? You know, I'm feeling better about it. I know I'm going to be spending the night here Friday into Saturday. That's one thing. But I am feeling a little bit better, at least about Father's Day, at least the back end of Father's Day. May not be a pretty day, and dads, you're not going to probably want to get out there on the links at 9 a.m. Sunday morning. But maybe into the afternoon, while things may not be dry, certainly the threat of active weather will be over. So let's get to it right now. So here we are. Low pressure area. And in fact, when you look at it, you go, where are the clouds? And that is a great question. In fact, if you look really closely, you get maybe some hint that there's something up here. I don't think that's really it. European model actually looks like it's kind of thinking, wait a minute, it's over here. That makes a little more sense. At least there's some convection bubbling here. And you got to look really closely, because there's actually 2 layers of clouds here. The brighter clouds are the upper layer, but if you look beneath them, you see some gray clouds that are rotating around that way. That's the broad circulation that's linked into this, which is potential tropical cyclone number 3. Come on now, cooperate for me here. All right, potential tropical cyclone number 3. And bear with me for a second, because I'm going to modify this graphic. You'll get to actually see how this works now. Don't normally do this on air, and because there's so much data in this graphic, it takes a few seconds for it to load. So hang with me while I load up the banner. I turned it off, believe it or not, to do a little commercial there, and I forgot to turn it back on. So let's see if that's going to give me the banner that I want. And there it is. There we go. Thank you for your patience. Now you get to see how this all really works. Basically, our program here is what you might think of as an ultra high-end PowerPoint slideshow. So that's how we get, that's how we build these slides for you. I see Morgan City in the house. Yeah, Morgan City, you're going to be the ones telling us just how significant this event is going to be as it heads our way. So let me save it, backing it out, and let's try this again. All right, we're up and we're running. Here we go. That's more like it. All right, so what I wanted to see, there it is, potential tropical cyclone number 3. By the way, I was kind of a little bit surprised they gave us a 7 o'clock intermediate update. Winds at 30 miles per hour, gusts to 40. So certainly nothing impressive there. Moving to the north at 9, that grabs your attention because this thing, remember, had been meandering for days down in the Bay of Campeche, the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. Now it's moving north, and it looks like that is going to be a trend that will continue for some time. Keep in mind, the yellow here indicates tropical storm warning. So already tropical storm warnings from Vermilion Parish all the way over into Mississippi and Alabama, and that includes the parishes around the tidal lakes. So a couple of things to note. Number one, and this kind of surprises me a little bit, not only does the Hurricane Center have it as a depression later tonight, but it actually has it as a tropical storm by the middle of the day tomorrow. So they think that area, even though there's no convection around it right now, they think that thing is just going to blossom up within the next 18 to 24 hours. I won't say it's certainly a possibility, but clearly they got to get some convection around that center before any of this can possibly happen. But let's assume it's the case. So it brings it up, headed right for the center of the Louisiana coast late Friday night into early Saturday morning. And the National Hurricane Center says that it's going to be approaching the coast with winds at about 45 miles per hour. And typically what you do is you take that number, you add 10 plus to it. So if the winds sustained are 45, we're talking about gusts to 55 to 60 plus. So it's not going to be an impressive tropical storm, but those winds are certainly going to be strong enough to knock down some trees, take down some power lines, maybe do a little power outage game down along the coastal parishes. Now, then we go from early Saturday morning, pushing it inland, very close to the Baton Rouge area, but notice by the time we get to Saturday afternoon, winds have already dropped down to 35. Now, truth of the matter is that it'll probably weaken even faster than that, because typically what we see is the forecasts for the inland wind speeds are often just a little bit overdone. But the bottom line is this is certainly going to be a storm that even for Baton Rouge is going to bring us some winds. Not a big deal. And in fact, wind will not be the number one issue here. Rain is going to be the issue. And notice how it accelerates off to the northeast. So the good news is by Saturday afternoon, the main threat is over, although we'll have some backside rains to deal with. And by Sunday, with this system up there in the Appalachians, we'll still have a little backside flow, probably bringing in some showers for Sunday afternoon. But I think Sunday looks pretty decent into the afternoon and evening, at least not an all-day rain. And so, Dad, you'll at least be able to get out there and do the barbecuing you get to do on your day. So not an entire loss of Sunday, Father's Day, but Saturday looks like most of Saturday is going to be a bit of a mess. So let's talk about this a little bit. A couple of things I wanted to show you. And if you were with me at 6:30, I showed you this before, and I'm going to show it to you again. I'm going to slide down here. And what I've done is I've trimmed this down to a cluster of spaghetti plots. See these guys here? Don't even worry about them. But notice that even these guys, this cluster here, they're all to the west of the cone. And that's what gives me a moment of pause, because I thought, you know what? this is going to be that could be a real issue, because since rain is going to be the main story with this storm, if this track ends up getting shifted a little bit to the west, and by a little bit I mean it doesn't have to be 50 or 100 miles, just shifted 20 or 30 miles to the west, and suddenly the rain numbers for our area could start to go up, and they could start to go up quickly, because this is going to be a right-handed storm. All of the storm energy, all of the rain basically is going to be to the right of the center of the system. So take this storm and bring it over here, and suddenly Baton Rouge metro area and the Channel 9 viewing area is under the gun for some heavier rains. But, and if you keep in mind, let's go back and look at the very beginning one more time here just to get a sense of what's going on with this system. If this is even close to right, you can tell that how displaced the rains and the convection, the storms, are going to be. So even if these guys come together a little bit, the convection is never going to get over top of that area of low pressure. It's always going to be on the eastern flank. And so what we want to see, and not that we want to wish bad things on our neighbors in Mississippi and Alabama, but the more we can see this track bend eastward, the less rain we're going to have to deal with. And I know, you don't want to wish things on those other folks, but look, between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, that stretch through there, people have seen 50, 55, upwards of 60 inches of rain. They've had a year's worth of rain already. We are hypersaturated, and many of the ditches, the channels, the canals, and the rivers and bayous are still on the higher side, especially those that feed into Bayou Manchac, the lower portion of East Baton Rouge Parish, down there along Bayou Fountain, and the lower stretches of Ward's Creek. They are unusually high given this run of drier weather we've had in the last few days, because they're pumping water, still pumping water out of the swamp down there, Bluff Swamp and Spanish Lake area. As long as they continue to pump the water out of Bluff Swamp into Bayou Manchac, that keeps Bayou Manchac high, and if Bayou Manchac is high, then Ward's Creek and Bayou Fountain, they stay high too, because they just can't drain as long as what they drain into is elevated. So we're in a situation where the last thing we need is rain for the weekend, and we certainly don't need 3 to 6 to 8 inches of rain, or the 5 to 10 that I was really nervous about just a couple of days ago. Well, we brought that number down. That's a good thing, and we may even bring it down again, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. So again, here we go with the storm. Right now, the forecast says it's going to be a tropical depression overnight tonight. That seems a little aggressive. Has it as a tropical storm by midday tomorrow, and then has a low end, but not insignificant tropical storm, Claudette, third named storm of the season, coming into south central Louisiana early Saturday morning before sunrise, and then it races off. And again, we're looking one more time at these spaghetti plots. It wasn't these guys that had me worried, but the fact that you had a cluster of these tracks to the west of the main forecast, that had me a little unsettled. So one of the things I've done now, we're going to go ahead and step forward here, and we're going to take a look at our two key models. The GFS, that's the American model, and then we'll look at the European model a bit later. And yeah, most of you already know that over the years, the European model has kind of had a better track record with storms in general. Not every single storm, but on the whole, it does a little bit better. Well, let's start with the GFS. And here is the official track. No cone, just the official forecast track. By the way, notice how close to Baton Rouge that track gets, but more importantly, notice that the track is east of Baton Rouge, which means that we expect the heavier rains to be over here. In fact, we can use this line as sort of our forecast boundary for the big rains. Anything to the west of that forecast track is going to be manageable rainfall. So here we go with the GFS. comes in. Notice that during the beginning, the first half of the track, it's very close to what the National Hurricane Center is doing. And what I've written in, here's where I think the low is going to be. You see the contour here. And by the way, because we don't have a whole cluster of these pressure contours, it tells us that it's still relatively modest storm. And then as we go from about, this is at Saturday 3 a.m. for the GFS, coming in a little bit farther to the west of Morgan City, and then it slides up into Mississippi, up around Jackson or so, by Saturday evening. So it comes in along the track here, and then it departs from the track by taking a little bit more of a northerly track rather than that northeasterly roll. All right, so that's the GFS. Pretty close to the forecast, the official forecast track. Now let's look at the ECMWF, the European, the Euro, if you will. Now one of the things you're going to notice is it starts off farther to the east. So when you see that, at first you go, hey, that's great news, because that means we're completely out of the ball game. But watch what happens. It actually starts to come back towards us. And you'll notice that the track is, in the early part of the track, is a fair distance from the official track. It brings it into, say, Terrebonne Parish at about midnight on Saturday, so it's a little faster and it's a little bit farther to the east. That's the good thing. And then it really bends it off and shifts it off really into Alabama rather than Mississippi. So the European model is shifted further to the east than the American model. And we'll go ahead and we'll take them both off and we'll kind of plunk down the two tracks. And you see that they're in fair agreement with the National Hurricane Center track. Now there's a third model that I know the Hurricane Center is leaning on that I couldn't draw in for you, and that's their own in-house model, which they call the HWRF. And it is very close to the official track and leans a little bit more to the GFS than it does the Euro. Bottom line is there are three models that seem to really coincide or link up well with the official forecast track the way it is right now. The only thing that keeps me just saying, let's not just assume this isn't a big deal, is that we still really don't know where that low is going to come together. Again, with no convection around the current low, it's hard to really say, well, that's going to be it. It may be it for now, but what we've seen in the past is sometimes you get these relocations where when another plane gets out there, they go, oh, wait a minute, the center looks like it's moved. And really, it's just a matter, not so much that it has changed position, it's that what they thought was going to be the center didn't turn out to be the center of low pressure. So we'll have to watch for the potential for this storm to maybe relocate as a better defined core of low pressure form. So just give me a second here while I glance at a couple of questions, and then we'll pick it up from there. Keisha says the sleeves are rolled up. Well, but they're below the elbow, so don't worry about it. We're good there. When I roll the sleeves up heading into the weekend, it's my sign that I'm going to be working Saturday and Sunday. And yeah, there is no overtime at WAFB. All right, so far don't see any significant questions. So maybe so far either I've already put you to sleep or you're understanding what I'm saying. All right, here we go. Let's move ahead then. So watches and warnings. So you see all of the parishes that are under a tropical storm warning, and that includes the parishes around the lakes. So keep that in mind. Ascension, Livingston, you're also under that tropical storm warning. EBR, West Baton Rouge, Felicianas, St. Helena, you're not. But the parishes bordering the tidal lakes under that tropical storm warning. We have a flash flood watch for our entire viewing area, but you'll notice it basically stops at the Atchafalaya Basin. So this is also another sign for the Weather Service that for our friends in Acadiana and farther west, probably not going to be a big deal. We're pretty sure it's not going to be a wind event for them, at least not anywhere other than maybe down along the coast. And then the rainfall numbers should be pretty manageable for them as well. And then we have a coastal flood warning down in the southeastern parishes, and a coastal flood advisory around the tidal lakes, coastal flood advisory around the Atchafalaya and Vermilion Bays. Bottom line is not really too concerned about big storm surge numbers here either. They will get some surge. And down along the coast, they could see 2 to 3 feet of surge. And in the tidal lakes, yeah, 1 to 2 feet. But two things here. One is we're only going to get about a day and a half of steady east, maybe 2 days of steady east wind to push water into Pontchartrain and Marpole. So there's some good news. Rather than a 4 or 5 day event, which could really drive the water up, it's going to be really, keep in mind, by Saturday morning, this system is already moved to the north, and so the winds are going to be coming around by Saturday morning. So we're really looking at less than 2 days there. 2 to 3 feet is not insignificant, but they get that a couple times a year. So that's going to be manageable for them as well. So as a surge event, we're not really too concerned about it either. Here's the winds. Now, this is going to change. Right now, the National Hurricane Center has only like about a 40 to a 50% chance of tropical storm force winds even getting in up along the coast. If the winds are going to be 45 miles per hour in the core as it's making landfall, we'll see a little bit of a better chance for tropical storm force winds in places like St. Mary and Terrebonne Parish, but it will drop off quickly. So I'm not worried about tropical storm force winds in Baton Rouge. Maybe some gusts in the 50s and 60s, especially if we get caught under a pretty significant rain band. But it's not going to be an issue where we're going to be dealing with big winds for a prolonged period of time. In fact, right now, the Hurricane Center's got tropical storm force wind probabilities for Baton Rouge at 20% or less. And that's probably going to hold true. I think the only question is maybe we'll see the numbers come up a bit down here in the coastal parishes in terms of the threat for tropical storm force sustained winds. Gusts, of course, are going to be an issue farther inland. And then here's what the National Hurricane Center is saying in terms of most likely arrival time of these winds. So the peak winds will be sort of pushing into the coast after Friday, 8 p.m. That's why we're kind of thinking again, landfall probably after midnight, but not long after midnight. But notice the peak winds are already up out of Louisiana and up into Mississippi based on their forecast Saturday morning. So this system will get in and out fairly quickly. And while the wind in the core of the system gets out of the way quickly, we'll still have some wraparound rains to deal with, I think. That would be what I would plan for, at least for the time being. So Saturday could be a mess. And whenever you have rain bands whipping in, you have that potential for 1 or 2 strong thunderstorms and some of those quick spin up tropical funnels. And those are the ones that are, number one, they're fast movers. Number two, they don't last long. Number three, they're very difficult to pick up on radar. And they can drop down very quickly and then lift out just as quickly. So I'm not ruling out the potential for maybe 1 or 2 tornadoes, particularly in the coastal parishes. Now, as we get from Friday into Saturday, that threat extends further inland. But remember, it's only a marginal threat. And by the way, the definition of a marginal threat is there's a 5% chance for a severe storm within 25 miles of a point. So it is a very low-end chance. It's just not zero. And in a setup like this, I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in southeast Louisiana or coastal Mississippi we get a report of a tornado touchdown. It's embedded within those passing rain bands that are going to start rolling in as early as tomorrow, although I really think we're not going to be dealing with much in the way of rainfall here in Baton Rouge and for most of our viewing area until we get into Friday afternoon, Friday evening. All right. So here's a look at a couple of the models. Now remember, the GFS was a little bit farther west than the Euro. But notice the GFS has, for our viewing area, rainfall totals on the order of 1 to 3 inches. More than we need, but 1 to 3 inches is manageable, even if we concentrate it in a period of about 24 to 36 hours. 3 inches in a couple of spots could be a problem. And if we're talking about 1 to 3 area wide, that means that somebody could get 4 inches or plus, but not widespread 4-inch totals based upon the current GFS forecast. 1 to 3, manageable. Not great, certainly manageable, and far less than what I was afraid of earlier this week when everything was pointing at 5 plus, 5 to 8 with maybe some bullseyes pushing the double digits. That's the GFS model. Here's the Euro. And check it out. It dries us out even more. Euro's basically keeping most of our viewing area at an inch or less. Boy, that would be a bargain. Now what's happening is all the heavy stuff is heading over to Mississippi. And again, don't want to wish bad things on those folks, but we don't need big rains here, given our current situation and status of being super saturated. So this would be good news. But as you look at both of those maps, you kind of get the idea. And let me go back, just back up one to the European, and you watch how, and just think of this, the break point between the green and the blue is basically the 1-inch rainfall line. If we've got it to the west of Baton Rouge with the GFS model, but to the east of Baton Rouge with the European model. But here's the thing. If the track were just to shift, instead of passing east of Baton Rouge, it were to pass between Lafayette and Baton Rouge, which isn't a big shift given that we're talking about a day and a half away. Because keep in mind, the 24-hour error for a forecast is about 40 miles. So that is certainly within the realm of potential. And that kind of a shift of 20 to 30 miles farther to the west would probably effectively translate into a doubling or more of our rainfall estimate. And that's the only thing that I'm still a bit nervous about. I am pleased that the rain numbers are coming down, but I'm not ready to bite on 1 to 2 inches just yet. We'll talk about that here in a second. By the way, when we look at what the Weather Prediction Center is saying, and I think these numbers, based on this track, may be a little high, but they're the safety numbers. They're the numbers to plan around. And you can see with the Weather Prediction Center, the 1-inch rains are well off to Lafayette and farther west. And as you get into our viewing area, we're talking about 2 to 4 to potentially even 5 inches of rain in our viewing area. And down along the coast, 5 plus, maybe 5 to 6. So that's the current official forecast coming out of the Weather Prediction Center. My suspicion is this may come down a bit tonight if that track still holds at 10 o'clock. But, you know, it's not a bad idea to be thinking about numbers like this, to be planning for something on the order of 2 to 5 inches of rain in the hopes that it'll be less. But if you know that 2 to 5 inches of rain, especially as wet as the environment is right now, if that is going to cause problems for your property, you can start thinking about how you might want to handle that. So here's what we've got in terms of the main concerns. I would say plan for 2 to 5 inches of rain. 2 to 4 from Baton Rouge northward, 3 to 5 plus, maybe even 6 plus as you go from Baton Rouge down closer to the coast. And then we'll hope those numbers are all high, because it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. But this estimate, 2 to 5 from north to south for our viewing area, is based on the current forecast. So keep that in mind. That could change if the track shifts west, the numbers go up. If the track shifts east, the numbers come down. All right, the other thing then, tropical storm wind gusts. Yeah, we're going to have some trees knocked down. We get a rain band rolling through here, could down some power lines. You may have some pockets of power outages. Not worried about widespread power outages in Metro Baton Rouge, but power outages closer to the coast could be a bigger deal, especially in the Morgan City area, eastward through Terrebonne and into Lafourche Parish. So just keep that in mind. Not worried about big winds here. Rain is still the #1 concern, but pockets of strong winds could do a little bit of damage and cause some outages. And then lastly, again, remember, very low end threat for severe weather, but it is not zero. So keep that in mind, that you still want to keep your guard up. And unfortunately, the threat will be basically from late Friday evening through, in my view, about midday Saturday for severe weather. By Saturday afternoon, we'll still be getting rain, I believe, but the severe weather threat will be over. And then it's just a matter of waiting for the rains to come to an end. So with all that said, I'm about to wrap it up here, and we did it in about 30 minutes, so thank you for your patience there. So for tomorrow, dry in the morning, and then the rain chances start to ramp up. And that's why you got your WAFB weather app, because you turn on the radar and you see where the rain bands are, and you see how they're moving and where they're moving to. And that's how you'll know, am I going to get rain at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, or am I going to stay dry until later into the evening? Because the rains that we get tomorrow are mainly going to be sort of rain banding issues. And so what you could get would be a nice heavy tropical shower that might last for 30 minutes, and then you break out into the clear again. So it's not going to be a washout tomorrow by any stretch the way it looks to me right now. Rain threats a little higher closer to the coast, a little bit lower closer to the Louisiana-Mississippi state line. Bottom line is watch for the rain bands on radar. That'll give you a heads up of what is coming for the day. And with that, we'll jump to the 7 and 10 day forecast here. So Friday into Saturday, tracking the tropics, watching Claudette, which certainly going to be the first named storm to make landfall anywhere, much less in the United States for this season. Don't think of it as an omen of what's coming for the rest of the season, but it is an early start for Louisiana, something we certainly don't need after last year. So things start to settle down, I think, on Sunday. Not a quiet weather day, but certainly the severe weather threat, for the most part, out of the picture, and maybe not a bad afternoon for dads on Father's Day Sunday. Unfortunately, we're going to keep things kind of lean and wet into next week. We're going to get another impulse of energy coming in here that's going to keep rain in the picture and just continues to drive that June total up, so that as we're well on our way to for the Baton Rouge area, a record first 6 months of the year in terms of rainfall. And then maybe towards the end of the week, things will settle down. Let me take a couple of quick looks at some of the questions here. John asks, will St. Landry Parish be affected by this storm? If the track is roughly correct, you'll get some rain, no doubt about it, but it'll be certainly a manageable amount of rain. You'll get some wind, but not big wind. St. Landry Parish looks to be far enough west of the main track of this storm that while you won't go completely without an impact, you're not going to have to worry about anything too serious for the parish. So I can handle parish questions. So basically, Lake Charles is in the clear. Well, I would say essentially in the clear, yes. And boy, if you think we need a break, Southwest Louisiana needs a bigger break still. So yeah, you're covered there, Crystal and Laura. I'd say over there is going to be good. Are the winds going to be strong enough to damage my home? I'm in East Baton Rouge Parish. In general, no, unless, and if you've ever followed me during tropical weather, I use the phrase walk your yard. Have you walked your yard? Pick up those items that might become little projectiles. Serious damage to your house only if you happen to have a tree that's not in the best of shape and it were to drop a limb on your carport or on your roof. These are probably not definitely, probably not going to be winds that are going to be strong enough to take whole trees down unless they're unhealthy trees. But there's going to be wind gusts that certainly can knock down some tree limbs. And that's why I think even in EBR Parish, we're probably going to see some pockets of power outages due mainly to trees on power lines and knocking the power lines down. But I don't see this as being a wind event that's going to do a lot of structural damage, not only to EBR, but really the only parish that I'd be really concerned about winds would be St. Mary and Terrebonne. And even there, winds are probably going to be manageable. Now keep in mind, I said probably, because what can happen is on occasion you can get a very strong thunderstorm to develop in one of those rain bands. And that thunderstorm itself can generate winds outside of the winds produced by the tropical system. So you got to watch for those rain bands inside those rain bands, you have those singular thunderstorms that can produce strong winds, and it's those singular thunderstorms that produce those quick spin up tropical tornadoes, tropical twisters. Hopefully that answered your question. Is it going to affect St. Francisville? Well, you know, I said no spots, but yeah, it's going to affect everybody. The question is, what does the word affect mean? Is it going to be a terrible event for West Feliciana Parish? No, I don't think so. Or East Feliciana Parish for that matter. No. You're going to get some wind, you're going to get some rain, but it looks like most of the energy will stay east of the Felicianas. All right. Here they come. I knew I was opening that floodgate, and I'm just going to ignore those questions. What about power outages? I think I mentioned that. There are going to be some. They're going to be more likely in the coastal parishes where winds will be a little stronger, but there can be power outages anywhere that you get one of those wind gusts that takes down a tree limb, drops it on a power line, and knocks out the power for a street or part of a subdivision. But this is not looking to be a widespread power outage type of an event. And where there are power outages, I think they will be distributed in a way that the utility companies should, in most cases, be able to respond to them fairly quickly. Is there a chance it could stall in the Gulf and strengthen? Well, yeah, there's always a chance. There's a chance it could turn around and head back to Mexico. But right now, the stalling doesn't look very likely. Strengthening, well, it is going to strengthen. Now, if you're asking me, could it become a hurricane? No chance. In fact, I thought 2 days ago it would struggle even to become a tropical storm. You see, the National Hurricane Center is being bullish on intensification, but like I said, towards the top end of this presentation, you don't even have any thunderstorms around the core right now. Until you get thunderstorms around the core, you really don't have much of a system at all. So it's going to take a while for those thunderstorms to develop. And then after they develop, then we'll start looking at the potential for intensification. But there's also going to be a fair amount of wind shear in the mid-levels of the atmosphere that will minimize how much it can strengthen. And there's a decent amount of dry air on its western flank that will also slow down intensification. So I would even be, I'll even say it, I'll be shocked if it becomes a high-end tropical storm. Not just surprised, I'll be shocked if it gets that strong. So I'm not really worried about this thing blowing up into a mean tropical storm, and certainly not a hurricane. My biggest concern has always been with the rain, and that remains the biggest concern for our viewing area. All right, let me check a couple more spots here. And for those of you that have heard and seen enough, of course, join us at 10. And at 10 o'clock, we'll have the updated coordinates, and we'll see if the Hurricane Center is still as aggressive in terms of its development. Somebody's saying it was hot outside. Hey, folks, if you were outside today, if every June day was like today, there'd be 3 million more people living in Louisiana. Today, I thought today for a June day was about as good as it can possibly get. No rain for the most part. And the humidity, the dew points down in the low 60s. I mean, that's close to unheard of in June. And what was happening is we were starting to get, let's pull up a map here just to give you sort of the perspective of how this is working. We're already starting to get some large-scale flow around the system. And so what we had today was the benefit of the large-scale flow. And remember now, these are clouds flowing at the mid and upper levels. But the lower levels, the flow for us was out of the northeast, bringing in low humidity air. So at 5 and at 6 o'clock, the air temperature was the same as the heat index. In the summer, that is almost unheard of down here. So hot today, yeah, but and I don't want to call it Phoenix, but it was a dry heat today. We don't get many of those. So I hope you had a chance to enjoy it, because that's going away quickly. All right, let's see what else we got here. Ricky from Waveland. Yeah, you folks are probably going to take a little bit of a bigger hit than we are. You'll get less wind, but you're probably going to get a lot more rain the way things are shaping up over there. I wouldn't be surprised if Waveland gets in the, could even get 6 to 8 inches of rain over there along the Mississippi coast, and a couple of good thunder bumpers with that as well. All right. Again, I'm not going to do point forecasts, so don't ask me about this town or that crossroads. Can you tell me the impacts exactly 1.32 miles north of the interstate in Walker? Yes, they'll be exactly the same as 1.31 miles north of the interstate. Hope that's helpful, Matt. What about the flooding? Maggie, I think we covered that pretty well. Fernando asked a pretty good question, I think, and I'm sure it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's a great question, and I've talked a little bit about this, especially in some public presentations. Fernando question, and we'll close with this. His question is, why has Louisiana become a magnet for these storms? Well, the short answer is bad luck. Some people don't want to accept that one. If you want to get into the climate change discussion, clearly the climate has changed recently. And even avoiding the whole fossil fuels human impact part of that equation, we also know that the climate has always been changing. And there have been periods of increased and decreased activity in the Gulf Coast region. Last year really was just bad luck. There were 10 named storms in the Gulf of Mexico, and 4 of them came here. And yet we only account for about 20% of the Gulf of Mexico coastline. So we just got cheated, if you will, during 2020. Why this storm is heading to us? Well, again, it's just bad luck. It's bad luck on multiple counts. First of all, it's not too early to have a storm in June. I mean, keep in mind, Audrey was a monster, and that was early June. So we've been hit in June before. Louisiana's even been hit in May. But it is too early. We shouldn't have to be dealing with June storms. But here we go, and that may be, like I said before, I don't see it as an omen for the rest of the season, but it just is going to be at least a good warm-up exercise for us for when one with a little bit more punch decides to come our way. And the chances are good for that. And why do I say that? Because, as Fernando points out, we have been a magnet for storms. Historically, Louisiana averages about 1 to 2 landfall, or let's put it this way. Louisiana averages about 7 landfalls every 10 years. So think of it as we get about maybe something close to 3 landfalls every 2 years. Well, last year we had 4 landfalls, tied the record. 4 is the most we've had since records going back to 1850s. And that 4 last year tied the 4 in 2002. But in 2002, they were tropical storms mainly, not 2 majors and a 3rd hurricane. So that's one thing. Over the last 20 years, we have been ground zero. We've had 25 landfalls in 20 years. That's way above an average of 2 or 3 every 2 years. So we're certainly in a run of active tropical activity. It's not that we're a magnet, it's that the whole basin has gotten very active in the last 20 years, and we just happen to be a hot spot for it. Because what frequently happens is a storm that forms down here in the Gulf is typically going to head north. And, you know, when you say if it's going to head north, well, that often takes Texas out of the equation. If it's going to head north, you've only got 2 slivers of coastline from Mississippi and Alabama. And so basically anything in the Gulf, more often than not, is either going to get Louisiana or it's going to get Florida. And that's what the situation has been in these past couple of decades for sure. So I'm going to leave it at that. We went a little longer than I expected, but hopefully you learned a little bit of something. I got to get ready for 10 o'clock, and hopefully I'll see you at 10. And again, with the new coordinates, and let's see what the Hurricane Center has to say about potential tropical cyclone number 3, soon to be Claudette. See you later.